So, Mr. Wellman, do you think we have a moral obligation to others?
Yes. So for society to work, we have to work together. It's called the social exchange theory, if you're looking at it in terms of psych, which is the idea that my actions will later come back to me down the road. So if we have the type of society where it's purely individualistic, we don't do very well. Collective societies that work together end up doing much better. It becomes more powerful. So you've got the reciprocal effect. You know, the more that I invest, the more that's going to come back to me. So it's not just I don't see it just as we should do it because it's the nice thing to do. We should do it because it actually benefits us directly right afterwards. So if we set up a society where we take care of each other, that's an investment later on. That's why I don't beat my children.
So the moral philosopher Kant said, "A good will is good not because of what it performs or affects, but simply by virtue or the violation." So pretty much Kant was saying that a good action is only good because of the intent that someone had.
Yep.
So if you did an action with a negative or bad intent, but it still positively impacted a lot of people, is it still considered a good action by you?
So you're dealing with the question of, is there anything really selfless?
Yeah.
Which I don't believe there is, because you get a benefit from everything you do. You will not do anything you don't want to do. Now we say we don't want to do it, but even if you say I don't want to go to school, you're still going to school. And the question is, well, why are you still doing it? Because I don't want to get into trouble, I want to graduate, all this. So you still want to. So I don't believe that we do anything that we don't actually want to do. So therefore, everything is selfish. I think it'd be selfish and pro-social at the same time. Me stealing your purse or giving you a purse would be both selfish actions. One of them is just going to benefit society. The other one is going to tear down society. So I think that motivation is impossible to determine in a person. So that's where I disagree with Kant, because he's saying that motives matter. I think it was Mills that was all about action. I can't remember. But anyway, so Kant is saying that your motivation is the determining factor for a moral action. To see if it is moral or not, I don't think you can determine that.
Right.
I think that's impossible. I think there are actions that are, what Aristotle was talking about with virtue is if it benefits people, and if you were to take your action and everybody did the same action and it was still good, then you know it's a good action, right? Because that means that everybody would benefit. Right. If it's an action that you don't want everybody else doing, like cheating on a test, then it's not a virtuous action. So I follow more of an Aristotle idea than I would Kant.
Do we have a moral obligation to others?
Yes, to do the right thing, yes. I think that it just kind of goes that, and when I say man, I mean the general context of man, not men, but man should be compassionate, they should help other people out, they should just be human to another human. You know what I mean? When you see somebody in trouble, you should acknowledge that they're a human being, and I think you should help them out. I think you should always do the right thing to every person all the time.
This question is kind of just about universal guilt, and
Okay.
the philosopher is Hannah Arendt. So her quote is, "For many years we have met Germans who declare they are ashamed of being Germans. I have often felt tempted to answer that I'm ashamed of being human." So she's kind of talking about do us as humans, should we have guilt for the actions of other humans even if we have nothing to do with it?
I don't know if it's guilt or if it's this, I think that it's this immense sense of wrongdoing, because I know when I went to watch 7 Years a Slave, I can't imagine what it, I just to try and imagine what they're feeling. I remember when I watched 7 Years a Slave, I was struggling with the idea that a human being could do that to another human being. Given that, we have wars, and then we have rules of war, which seems like the weirdest thing to me.
Yeah.
We're gonna go kill somebody, but if we capture you, then we're just gonna hold you and torture you. So, I think there's a lot of conflict in that, and I think that brings out guilt. But I don't know that I feel inhuman. What I think is, it's you look at the flaws of humanity. How a human being can treat another human being, and you feel that remorse, but I don't know. I don't know if it's guilt. I can't be guilty for something that I didn't do, but I can feel remorseful for the pain that has caused other people.
Right. So like you kind of just acknowledge the pain that other humans have caused, but you don't feel like responsible for it.
Well, I mean, I wasn't alive.
Exactly.
Right. So I mean, I am not responsible for it. Well, am I responsible for future things? Maybe.
So like if you take the quote that Hannah and used and you apply it to more like relatable topics, not like World War II or like slavery, but something like recycling. Like, so if you don't like recycle like a couple things, are you responsible for all like the devastating like consequences of the environment or like the
Yes.
pollution that's going
Yes,
in the environment?
because
Or
I
kind of,
have
like,
control of that right now, right? And so in terms of like recycling and things like that, I feel responsible because I feel like I have to be a model, like that I need to model that behavior if I expect other people to model that behavior. If I want to not just recycle plastic, but eliminate the use of plastic, then I have to model not using plastic. We need to stop it for the future, and that means our behavior has to change.
Do you think that we have a moral obligation to others?
Can you be more specific?
Like, okay, so do you think that as a human, it's our job to help other humans that are like, maybe suffering or something like that? Or is it a duty to like morally help someone? Like, is it immoral to not help someone?
I think we do everything for ourselves. So, are there real true morals in people? Well, I mean, that's kind of, morality in and of itself is kind of our own little creation. So why would we be moral and have an obligation to someone else? There must be some sort of thing that I get out of it.
Right. So you kind of think.
So
like,
I guess I don't really think that there is a moral obligation, except that for whatever reason, you as an individual are going to get something out of presenting a moral obligation or the sense of moral obligation to somebody else.
Right. So you just think like everything someone does is just an act of selfishness and like they're not doing it to help others, like it's self-inspired?
I think everything's self-inspired.
Okay. Every man is affected by this struggle in so essential a way that he cannot fulfill himself morally without taking part in it. So we're only as free as like the most enslaved person in society.
If I never encounter that enslaved person, then how does that affect my freedom?
Well, she kind of thought that like we have to like fight for injustices and kind of like since we're only as free as the most enslaved person, it's like our duty to like push that freedom up and up to make sure everyone is equally
Well, I already said the moral obligation is for the self. And so maybe the community around us is not is a product of us being selfish.
Okay, so like the enslaved person is only enslaved because of other people's selfishness?
Mm-hmm.
So do you believe we have a moral responsibility to one another as humans?
Yes,
Why?
because I think that our purpose on earth is to, when we leave it, for it to be a better place than what we found.
And then we have a Kierkegaard quote, and you just tell us like if you agree with it or not. So it says, "The knight of faith is obligated to rely upon himself alone."
So do you think that we can judge other people's actions as good or bad when morality is subjective and can change like person to person?
Are you looking for, is there a set morality that all people should live by?
Yeah, like do you think that if there isn't a set morality, like if morality is subjective and changes person to person, that we can still judge someone's actions as good or bad?
I don't know that I do a lot of judging, but whether you're religious or not, and more people aren't religious, the Ten Commandments will not steer you wrong. I mean, that's the way to live life, I think.
So then like to determine if someone's action is good or bad, should we use the Ten Commandments to determine that?
Well, some of the Ten Commandments, like don't take the Lord's name in vain, or this, some of them for non-religious people are not something that you should go by. Although all the time I'm yelling at the kids, language, language, language. You get them
Yeah.
to shut up. I try not to do a lot of judging
That's good.
people.
So our ideas align with Hannah in the fact that we think you have a moral obligation to help others and, stand up to oppression and just do things that help people in need, because it's not only moral, but it's in the better interest of society and yourself.
Also, you can't expect help from others if you're not willing to help them as well. And we believe morality lies in equality, which can only exist if we have an obligation to one another.
So yes, we do have an obligation, a moral obligation to help others.